Great interview today about a buyout of a franchise concept by someone with great experience in mergers and acquisitions. You're not going to want to miss this.
This is the Franchise Pitfalls and Profit Show. Each week, we bring you the challenges and triumphs of being in the franchise development and consulting business. The things you need to make money faster. And now your host, one of the most successful franchise developers in North America, John Shin.
Hey, welcome everybody. Welcome, John. We have John Prothrow. Really interesting story for our audience today. Let me introduce John real quickly, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Thanks for being with me, John.
Yeah, of course. Happy to be here.
You bet. So John is currently co-owner and CEO of Foot Solutions. It's a global wellness, foot wellness retailer. You've broken out. This is something I want to chat a little bit about. Broken through kind of that emerging brands, 7,500 unit kind of emerging brands. Specializes in orthotics, advanced footwear. John has done business all over the world. Has lived over the world, lived in China. I lived in Japan. So John and I really connect on that expatriate experience. So I loved having John on. He's also board of director of the DB Group Global. It's an Australian industry group, which I thought was really interesting. Again, John just brings a wealth of international background, mergers, acquisitions to the interview, and I'm real excited to have you on, John. Thanks.
Hey, I'm ready.
Awesome. All right. Well, yours is pretty unique. A lot of times we have emerging brand founders. You organized a group of partners to buy a company, buy a franchise concept when it was more in that emerging brand space. So I wanted to hear, how did that come about? Why did you pick franchising? And why Foot Solutions? How did all of that come about?
Well, first, let me say I don't know anything about franchising. I know a little bit more than I did 3 years ago, but we didn't set out to buy a franchise business. We set out to buy a portfolio of businesses, and we're raising a small private equity fund to do that. But while we were raising the capital, a friend of mine, an attorney, called me and said one of his clients, the owner of a company called Foot Solutions, which I had never heard of, was getting on in years and interested in selling his business, and would I be willing to talk to him? So I went and met with the original founder. Been around for 20 years. Foot Solutions have been around for 20 years. And I really fell in love with the concept. I thought it was a great idea, very necessary for the market, a need-based retail store that's service-oriented. And so I thought, well, I'm going to look into this a little bit more. Went and secret shopped some stores, asked for per unit economics, that sort of thing. And saw a real opportunity to take what was a good idea and a nice foundation and a good solid group of core stores, and really turn it into something that we thought was next level. So awesome. That's what we did. I called my investors, and they're all friends. I don't want to make it sound too formal, but they're people I'd gotten to know over the years in M&A, and just said, look, let's buy this one. And I don't want a portfolio. I want to run this one. And here's my plan for kind of making it something that could be really valuable and really interesting.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was just had a call earlier this morning with a private client of ours, and we were talking about he's getting approached by a lot of private equity companies, and we talked about the importance of that match to be sure that is it a private equity company that's just going to come in purely as a profit play, get as much out of this business in a short period of time as we can, or as he may be looking at, or he would only consider ones who are going to help him get from where he is at in the 40s as far as units, maybe to 200. A private equity company that's going to put the funding, has the growth mindset that aligns with him. So really, really interesting that you chose to stay with the company rather than just be something in your portfolio. So Anything, you said you thought it was needs based, it was service oriented. You personally had shopped it. Any other things as you were starting to get into it and decided you wanted to run it? Were there any other visions that you had? And how's that been going? Have there been any surprises along the way?
Well, we have made a few acquisitions, and therefore we've grown a little bit faster than we expected to. So that's a positive, but also you break a lot of things when you do that, and you have your own set of challenges when you do that. But it's been a really good ride, and we don't see any end to the runway, at least for now. So we're real excited about that. The business itself, the economic profile of the business is really interesting. The margins are really good. The customer loyalty rate is really spectacular, and we're offering something that is really a niche because it's quasi medical, and we do truly custom orthotics in a retail setting, which is not something you see very often. Most of the time, you see over the counter type situations. But we're also taking what is, in some sense, a relatively antiquated industry. And when we bought it, it was still sort of in version one of how people make custom orthotics. And there's nothing wrong with the way custom orthotics have been made traditionally. But we brought in 3D printing and digital scanning and CAD CAM design that's tied into a system. And we found the best system to do that over in Europe from a German, Spanish, Dutch company. And we're really excited because we've started installing those. I think we have 37 machines out there and working. And now we're doing a lot of 3D printing.
Nice.
And it started out, we were doing a lot of milling, which people are very comfortable with, milling out of blocks and foam. People are used to that. That's normally a very time-consuming process. A lot of human error involved in it. It can be good for making adjustments. But when we introduced 3D printing, we were sort of doing 20% 3D printing and 80% milling. And now we've sort of moved, it's gotten closer to sort of 65, 70% 3D printing as people have gotten more comfortable with it. I wear them. It's a great product, and it's a much simpler, more efficient way. There's also not a lot of waste associated with it, which is a nice thing for the environment. So we're doing some pretty exciting things from a technology perspective that bringing this industry into, the next level from a technology perspective.
Yeah, and as we have talked before a couple of times, our audience are potentially buyers of franchises. There's also emerging brands, also brokers, consultants are watching the podcast, and some of the things I hit on that you've really reinforced is unit economics. You're, as the franchisor, you're doing things that are going to help the profitability of the units, which is key. Candidly, not all franchisors do that or focus there. The other thing that I always tell people who come to me looking for franchise brands, I always tell them if technology is not built into their model, then like General Motors used to say, you're buying your grandfather's Oldsmobile, and so I love the fact that you've brought in 3D printing, both utilization of what I would call, more technology, but again, it's also helping the unit economics.
And helping the customer too. It's really nice. We can build spaceships with this, technology. So we have a lot of times we get referrals from the medical community, and a lot of times it's very difficult cases in terms of designing custom orthotics for someone, and we can do all sorts of things with 3D printing that you couldn't do otherwise.
Awesome. So you're uniquely retail in a space that's not classically retail. You mentioned referrals, so I'm always curious. Again, it's another thing I talk to any of our clients that we're helping match them to franchises, and again, brokers would be real interested. What's that blend look like? What's the marketing for your units? What are the marketing for your franchise partners typically look like?
So we encourage people to get into the medical side of it after they've been open for, say, a year or so, because the cash business is good, and you have to have a nice process and a nice team on the cash side before you decide to get into medical. But once you have gotten a good, well-run business, you can then say, well, I want to start doing Medicare, uh,
Hmm.
which requires what's called a podorthic certification, or a CPED, certified podorthist, or a qualified medical professional to be working in your store. And we train podorthists up. We get people up to be certified podorthists, and then you can apply with Medicare to have your facility accredited. Once you've done that, you can serve Medicare diabetic patients through what's called the therapeutic shoe bill,
Interesting.
which is very nice because a lot of diabetics have, of course, foot issues related to diabetes, diabetic neuropathy being a major one, and you see a lot of diabetics who lose digits or even lose limbs
Yeah.
because of the issues associated with it. And so Congress passed a bill that allows Medicare patients to get 3 pairs of custom orthotics and a pair of footwear, and Medicare will pay 80% of allowable.
Wow.
And so we do a lot of that business. We try to have at least one store in each region that can do Medicare diabetics. And then once you have that accreditation, it's sort of a hop, skip, and a jump to be able to do VA work. So we work a lot with veterans under a similar sort of program. But on top of that, we're providing a medical service, quote unquote. And so the healthcare professionals will just send us cash pay patients all the time. And a lot of podiatrists, they want to do procedures. They're not interested in doing customs.
Right.
A lot of the clinics, orthopedics, will send people. They'll say, "Hey, now we've got your knee fixed. Go over to Foot Solutions and make sure you have the right shoes and the right orthotics underneath
Yeah.
so that biomechanically you're working right." So we get a podiatrist, orthopedist, and physical therapist are probably our largest referral bases. But beyond that, I mean, we talk a lot about the medical because it's an important part, but it's probably only 15-20% of the revenue, even of the Medicare accredited stores.
Mm-hmm.
It's still mostly cash pay. It's what you would consider sort of typical retail marketing, although we do it in-house as the franchisor. We have our own team, and so you're not paying agency fees to buy Google ads and that sort of thing.
Nice.
But probably nothing you would be surprised about after that.
Yeah, and I think again for consultants who are trying to help match people as well as potential buyers of franchises, even if it's only 15, say 20%, I still think it's always good to have some kind of a base that you can go to. Whether it's situations where there's national accounts, or in your case there's the Medicare, maybe the VA, government bills. I think that just gives. That's a real plus, I think, to a franchise concept.
Well, we're a need-based business, and we sell a lot of shoes, okay, and a lot of brands you've heard of, some that you haven't, but you're not a 40-plus woman. But we sell a lot of healthy shoes, but we're still a need-based business, and so what I love about it, and what I loved about it when we were diligencing the company, is it's not real susceptible to economic ups and downs.
Right.
So I follow footwear stores and see what's happening in the market, and footwear stores in general just sort of ride the waves of economic turmoil.
Mm-hmm.
And Foot Solutions just doesn't have those kind of dips because we're primarily serving an older audience, I'd say 40 plus. I mean, and mostly female. And by the time you've gotten to the point where you're feeling like I need to start paying attention to my health and my foundational health, you're going to pay for that regardless of whether the stock market's up or down that day.
Yeah. I love the needs based phrase, and I'm sensing you're really not impacted much by Amazon or the internet. I know I buy at least sneakers. I buy my running shoes all online. I don't go into a store anymore.
I mean, of course people do that, but we don't. Amazon e-com doesn't. It's a service business. That's the first thing to tell people have to understand is you're coming in because you have something you want solved.
Exactly.
Right? And that's why we're Foot Solutions, right? A lot of times people will come in and they'll just buy a pair of running shoes. That's fine. We have that. But most of the time they come in and say, which one of these styles do I need to be wearing? Because we carry healthy footwear, which
Yep.
means it's for a specific purpose and body type. And so, let's say you don't want custom orthotics, but you're a runner. Well,
Yep.
then we'll say, hey, do you have any aches and pains when you're running? Does your heel hurt? Do you have any hip issues the next day? Or do you
Exactly.
feel, we have a product that is a high frequency shock absorption product called Noeen that was pitched on Shark Tank. And we bought that product we bought the distribution agreement from the owner, and he's a partner now with us. But it goes underneath your insole, and it reduces that shock that comes up through your body when you land. And so, people come in asking for our advice, and that's why we spend a lot of time training, because when you come into a Foot Solutions, the person you see knows what they're talking about. And that's one of the biggest differences, if not the biggest difference, between going to a running store or going to the
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And like I said, I agree. Needs based, service oriented. They're not really going to be able to get their problems solved by buying something online for the most
right.
part. So, so you were new to franchising. Did you have any apprehensions about it being a franchise concept? And I'm always curious. Any surprises and any things that you didn't expect, any big differences than had it been, say, a non-franchised acquisition?
Man, that's a long question. So the first 3 years, we didn't try to sell any franchises.
Okay.
Because when we got in, I'm not disparaging previous ownership, but it had sort of become a dying brand a little bit. And he had sold, really, the previous owner had sold quite a few Foot Solutions. And I don't think the support was there to really make it what it
Right.
could be.
Yep.
And so we said, look, we actually can't have a support team at the size we're at now. We need to get enough scale to have a corporate group that can actually support
Very important. Yep.
franchisees.
Very
So,
true.
besides our staff and our 18 corporate stores, we have now, about 30 people on the corporate team to provide support. So we've got enough scale now where we've got a team. We didn't push go on selling franchises until the start of this year, so almost exactly 3 years into it. But we feel really good about it now. We feel like we have learned the hard lessons the hard way. We've got enough corporate stores where we can try things before we ask franchisees to buy. Yeah,
Yes.
I always say that about the marketing. The franchisees have no idea how much money I've wasted trying
Right.
things.
Yeah.
A few weeks ago, we noticed that something was working online, some digital advertising imagery or messaging. And I said, let's see what happens if we, really blow it out. Let's see if it's worth spending X amount of dollars per store to do it. We threw all this money behind the corporate stores, totally bombed. And guess what? The franchisees never heard a word about it. Now,
Right.
when something like that works, we say, look, you need to do it because it's already worked. But we
Yep.
have the infrastructure now to have the support team. We've got the corporate stores to provide sort of a test case, a laboratory to see what works and what doesn't. And then we've got the scale to have really spectacular people and have our own marketing group. And the people that we've hired and built from an organizational perspective, we are best in class, I think. Besides the CEO, he still needs some work.
Well, I went to the IFA convention this year, and one of the speakers talked about responsible growth, and so I shared that this is a great example, audience, of responsible growth. And she was very, the speaker at IFA was very understanding of the FSO that they had worked with, because it wasn't the FSO's fault. It was their fault as the franchisor not being ready for the anticipated growth. So I applaud you. And I mean, I think that takes a lot of character and a lot of integrity from the leadership that you and your partners.
I tell you what, it was, you asked one of the things that was surprising. Of course, we didn't meet a lot of the franchisees beyond secret shopping during diligence. But right after we bought it, we had our annual meeting. And so everybody showed up because, a week after, a week before somebody had bought the company, everybody wants to know, okay, who's now running this show.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we made a point to sit down with every single one of them. And there's a lot of hurt feelings, a lot of horror stories. Some people were happy and fine and everything, but there was a lot of people. The universal message was corporate doesn't do much for me,
Right.
and I know why, because there wasn't enough volume for corporate to really have anybody to help,
Exactly. Yeah.
But not being from the franchise world, I was kind of disappointed, I would say, in some cases shocked, the more I learned about how franchising oftentimes works. Some franchises are very good, but oftentimes it's a sales organization.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly right.
It's an idea and then a sales organization, and the person gets a brand and a logo, and gets put on a website. And then after that, you got to figure it out, buddy, or you're in trouble.
That's exactly right.
And we have actually, we sold another multi-pack today. So far, we started in January. We've sold 8 territories so far, which is good. We're not trying to go too fast, but I've had people come to me and say, I'd like to do franchising with you, and then they start immediately talking SBA loans and putting up their house, and I'm just not. I'm not really interested in putting your family's wealth on the line. I'd like to have people who feel comfortable with the investment and are genuinely competent, professional business people.
Well, you started to ask answer my next question.
Yeah.
So you're in the market again now. You've got responsible growth plans. You've got a healthy 6 months already under your belt. Who are you looking for? How would you describe your ideal, if there is such a thing, but your ideal franchise partner that you're trying to bring on now?
Well, there's nothing wrong with buying yourself a job. Okay, I don't have any issue with that. But Food Solutions, the way we talk about it now, it's probably different than the way it was sold previously. But I think we're much more sincere about how the arc works in a Food Solutions. You need a few years to feel like you got a really good store, because we're not selling cookies. And so, somebody buys a cookie from you today, they're not coming back tomorrow and buying another cookie from you. They are coming back to buy another cookie from you. Somebody buys a custom orthotic from you today, you might not see them for a while. You're hoping they come in and buy shoes and whatever. But if a dude buys shoes from you, you're going to see him next year. At least that's my sort of pace. Not anymore, but it used to be, buy a pair of running shoes and then next year buy your next pair of running shoes.
Right, yeah, exactly.
And have the pair of dress shoes that you wear 6 times a year at weddings and funerals, and until those heels fall off, you're probably not buying another pair of those.
That's right.
So
not nowadays. Years ago, I used to wear dress shoes all the time, but
not today. That has been a major shift if you want to talk about footwear. But so you're building that customer base. Now the customer base is extremely loyal. Once somebody comes into Food Solutions, gets the service, even if they're just buying shoes, you're going to see that customer the next time they're buying shoes. They're coming back. Not 100% of the time, but most of the time. But that first couple of years, you're really just getting that foundation. And it's not really until sort of end of year 2, year 3, where you start to see the same people that were there in year 1 and year 2 show up. So it's really an annuity investment. And because of that, your ideal sort of franchisee is usually a multi-unit investor type person. Which is all we've sold so far.
Interesting.
Again, there is nothing wrong with I want to buy this and I want to run it. But you gotta know you're not making a whole lot in the first couple of years. You're building that customer base. Now we've got franchisees, just about every franchisee from a historical perspective was that, mom and pop buying it
Yeah.
and running it.
Interesting.
And there are several in the Foot Solution system who make great money doing that. I mean, really good money doing it. But they will all tell you it took them a while to get there. You know,
Yeah.
it took them 3 or
Yeah.
4 years to get there. But you've got stores that are, and people renting. You want to talk about the economic dynamics of the business. You've got people renting space for $3,000 a month and doing 800,000 in revenue in that space at
Yes.
60 plus gross margin in a lot of cases. So it could be a really nice little business for you, but you can't buy it. I would never sell a franchise anymore to someone who put their house up on an SBA loan,
Yeah.
quit their job, and is expecting to make the kind of income that they would if they were, VP of,
Yep.
IT or something.
And again, for my audience, that's character and integrity and ethics that unfortunately, you don't see universally in franchising. So that's awesome. That's awesome, John. Hey, I always ask folks, are my guests before we end, and it's totally up to you if they're what you want to say. But I always ask you: is there anything we didn't talk about? Is there any questions I didn't ask that as you and I were preparing for meeting today and doing the interview and the show, that you wanted to be sure to cover? So I always give folks kind of a final opportunity if there's anything that you may, something you want to get across to the audience, something we just haven't touched on yet. Anything that you'd like to kind of close us with?
I don't think you haven't asked any questions that you should ask, but when you look at, I would say if you're looking at franchising and you're thinking about buying or investing in a franchise or supporting a franchise from a broker perspective, I would, look at the core values and see whether or not they align with your own, but also see whether or not there's evidence that those core values are being followed. And from our perspective, if you want to know us, we have a list of six core values, and the ones that are most, I'd say the one that is most important to us is sincerity, and the second one is trustworthiness. So you will get from us from the very beginning of a process, all the way down to the associate level, seeing a customer come into the door. You will get a very honest opinion. You'll get a very open and transparent and sincere interaction. And that's the kind of people we're looking for. So beyond being competent, professional, and cashed up, what we're looking for in terms of partners in this business are people that we can trust. And that's the only thing I'd add.
That's awesome. That's awesome, and I 1,000% agree. Always encourage folks to be sure there's those personal alignments, and I love companies that have value statements that are published, that they're out there, and that they talk to their potential franchise partners about them. Hey, John, you've been awesome. Hey, we really appreciate you being on the show with me today. Thanks.
Thanks, Don. Appreciate it.
You bet.